Hello, BookTube. Welcome to Sagalong 2020. We did this last year in 2019. Um, a group of us get together in February and we read the Icelandic sagas. So I'm going to let you know who else here is in the group of folks producing videos. We have a lot of other folks following along. So let me get right to this. So we have Bookish North, Elena Macradina, Lukash at Totally Pretentious, Steve Donahue, Tilly Shelf, Michael McGrath, and Byways in Bookland. So all these folks are starting off the month the same way. So I'm starting with the Saga of the Icelanders. This is originally published in 5 volumes. This is a selection from that. I get a little bit of glare here because I'm right next to a window. It says a preface by Jane Smiley. I got this online. It's about 19 bucks, and it's a heck of a book for that price. It's a selection from a 5-volume set called The World of the Sagas. And this one has an introduction by Robert Kellogg and a preface by Jane Smiley. A lot of supporting materials in here that I've found helpful. So we're all, for the first 2 weeks, reading the Saga of the People of Laxdæla, the Laxdæla Saga. And then the little introductory notes here, it says the time of the action is 8:90 to 10:30. And the time of writing, it was been written between 1250 and 70. We don't know who the author is. There's many theories out there. And we probably never will know. So I read you a little bit here from the introduction. The Saga of the People of Laxdæla is vast in conception. Its story includes important characters from other major sagas, and its time span is well over a century. The grand sweep of its action, at whose center is the greatest of all saga heroines, Gudrun Olsvardottir, takes in the Viking realms in Britain and Ireland and has been shaped by continental literary traditions and several types of saga. This is a family saga, describing the line of Kettle Flatnose, and more particularly that of his daughter Un the Deep-Minded, the matriarchal settler of Delur in West Iceland. It is also a heroic tragedy in which conflicting loyalties subvert the bonds of family and lead to enmity and vengeance, a dramatic account of social ambition that also probes the rights of women, the lowly born and the illegitimate, the history of a regional feud over land, wealth, and status, and above all the story of the life and loves of Gudrun, her feminine nature coming to terms with the tragic forces of the heroic man's world. Now, it's not super long in this, so the introduction's on page 270, and the entire thing will be done by, so from 270 to, let's see here, from 270 to 421. So not super long. I am on my translation's broken up here into small chapters. So here's chapter 31. There's short pieces. A couple things that have really stood out to me with this is family and family obligations. There's an awful lot of genealogy in the beginning of these. And they are Icelandic names, and they can be a bit confusing for an English language person like myself. You will start to see patterns. You'll start to see names that seem familiar. There's a lot of family obligation back and forth to each other. There's a bit of where the wealthy and the powerful families will foster care folks, and that becomes a big deal because it ups the opportunity for the fostered child. And there's a lot of strange practices. There's a story that runs through a couple of spots about this really tough to live with guy. Excuse me. I think his name was Hrap. Like I struggle with the names. And when he finally does die after causing misery for everybody forever, he wants to be buried standing up, right in his doorway of his house. And the family obliges, and he just haunts it, so it drives everybody insane. And the place is finally abandoned, and then his body is reburied somewhere else. And later on, you have a character who has a slave, and the slave doesn't want to go in there, and the master goes with the slave, and neither one of them really have much fun because Hrap is literally haunting the place. They finally bury him way, way away. But there's stuff like that sprinkled through. There's always seems to be, so a lot of these families moved to Iceland because they didn't want to deal with the first big king of Norway. But then you have, it seems like a rite of passage is for a young person to get on a boat, go trading to Norway, to get timber to build their homestead in Iceland. You get one trip that was actually the mother of one of the characters. She was a slave, and of course she was a royal Irish princess. So that young man goes to Norway, which is necessary. Then on his trip he goes and meets that king in Ireland. And so you have a lot of traveling around, a little background in the British Isles and Norway and Iceland, all different scenes there. There's gift giving that I find very interesting. You know, he gave him a boat, or he gave him a boat with all the trade goods, or the King of Norway will give them a sword or an axe that's beautiful, and it becomes a symbol of their influence and their wealth. So a lot of different characters, a lot of strong women characters who wield a very interesting type of power. If the men don't live up to the social expectations, the women often will take the upper hand. There's a lot of honor, family honor. What do we expect of a person? What do we expect of a person of influence? And a lot of characters run across this story. It's moving through the generations rather quickly. So thus far, very good, very enjoyable. Like I say, I struggle a little bit with the genealogies, and I know they're important to keep track of characters. And some of that's just the Old Norse names and that sort of thing. I'm enjoying it. So next week, I'll have more to say how the overall story worked out. So the Laxdæla Saga will end next week. It's next Saturday. I'll post. And then after that, the plan now, unless I get super busy, so there's smaller sagas in here. So everybody on Sagalong 2020 is going to move from Laxdæla Saga to their own for the final 2 weeks choices. You could do a small saga, a different one each week for the last 2 weeks, or you could do a longer one, or whatever they choose. My initial plan was to read one of the most famous family sagas of them all, and that's Njal's saga, or Burnt Njal, depending on what translation you have. A very famous story. A very great book in the history of literature. I have not read it before. I've read excerpts. So this would be a chance for me to read that in the last 2 weeks. something I've always looked forward to doing. Have to see how the schedule works out. So with the index, let's see how many pages this thing is. 377, so it's easily doable if the schedule holds up. So that's what I'm planning on now. We will see how it goes. But yeah, I'm really enjoying this. I hope you check out all the other Sagalong channels. And I'm looking forward to seeing more of their videos and getting their take on things. So thank you, BookTube.